So if you're ready, creeps, fasten your drool cups and hold on to your vomit bags. We're going to the movies! Frights, camera! Action!
Okay. Show me.
Show some fucking respect for the dead, will ya?
There they are. They were inside you the whole time. You did have guts.
There's something out there waiting for us.
I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods.
It's all true. The undead surround me.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Welcome to All Guts, No Glory, a horror review show where I cover everything from Get Out to Let the Right One In. And today I'm starting the Friday the 13th franchise right at the beginning, with the first Friday the 13th released in 1980. This movie came about in a weird way. Sean Cunningham, who got his start producing his buddy Wes Craven's movie Last House on the Left, needed money for his passion projects, G-rated kids movies. Knowing horror movies were making a lot of money, Cunningham came up with the title, Friday the 13th, and took out an ad in a newspaper looking for investors without even having a story. Once he was able to secure around $500,000 to make the movie, he enlisted Victor Miller, who had previously worked with Cunningham on the aforementioned kids movies before.
Parameter that I was given when we started this project was that Halloween had made a lot of money at the box office and we were going to rip it off. And that's Sean's exact quote. He said, Halloween's making a lot of money, let's rip it off.
So with Cunningham's direction, Victor Miller's script, and $500,000, what do we get? We get Friday the fucking 13th. And to call this a landmark horror film is an understatement. If Friday the 13th's predecessors, Halloween, Black Christmas, and to a certain extent the Texas Chainsaw Massacre opened the door, it was Friday the 13th that ripped the door off the hinges and cemented the common slasher movie tropes that would become a genre standard, a silent killer dishing out quick, gory deaths to horny teenage victims. But Friday the 13th differs from its predecessors. Whereas Halloween was about an anonymous killer boogeyman and you rooted for Laurie Strode to defeat him, Friday the 13th inverts that concept, giving us anonymous victims who we can't wait to see die at the hands of the franchise's golden boy, Jason Voorhees. The cooler the kill, the louder we cheer. For a modern example, think of the Saw movies. We know everything about John Jigsaw Kramer and why he does what he does, but all we know about his victims is that they're sinners and we're going to see them die gruesomely. And we're strangely okay with that. It's that simple, entertaining formula that made the Friday the 13th franchise into a media juggernaut, spawning action figures, comic books, novels, video games, fan films, and turning Jason Voorhees into a pop culture icon who's appeared in talk shows, animated shows, sitcoms, and everything in between.
I don't get it. They should be here by now.
What are you gonna do?
Aside from the standard slasher tropes I mentioned earlier, Friday the 13th set another standard for the genre, and that's lots and lots and lots of sequels, all of which I'll be looking at over the next few weeks. But before we get to those, we gotta cover the original. So let's break out the marshmallows and sleeping bags, light the campfire, and get this Crystal Lake party started. Friday the 13th begins on Crystal Lake in 1958, where we hear some campers singing Down in the Valley, a 1920s folk song that I guess producers in 1980 were into, since it will be used in one of the most famous comedy scenes of all time later that year, in the Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder movie Stir Crazy, where it was sung by the hulking prisoner with the voice of an angel, Grossberger.
Down in the valley so low, hang your head over, hear the wind blow.
At the aforementioned camper sing-along, two counselors, Barry and Claudette, are giving each other whatever the 1958 version of Fuck Me Eyes was. The fornication fixation? They sneak off to do a little sinning, but God's not the only one watching. There's also a point-of-view killer, who interrupts them and promptly kills Barry with a stab in the gut. Poor guy, definitely died with a boner. Claudette tries to defend herself with some cardboard boxes, but slow motion and a freeze frame signals her death just off screen. If you're wondering what happened to her, she got her throat slit, although this behind-the-scenes photo is the only footage of her death. We then get a title card that would make even the most stone-cold of killers proud. After the opening credits, we end up in the present, where a backpacker named Annie walks to a town so small that a dog has to run the local gas station and give out directions.
Hi, girl. Excuse me. Hi, boy. Hey, you speak English? How far is it to Camp Crystal Lake? That far, huh? Okie dokie. See you later. Ugh.
The town she's in is Blairstown, New Jersey, which alongside Hope, New Jersey, and Camp Novi Bosco in Hardwick, New Jersey, provided the filming locations. In an awesome featurette on the box set, we revisit the locations 40 years later, where things have remained pretty much the same, and Robbie Morgan, who played Annie, even recreates some of her scenes. If you're wondering how the locals feel about being known as a Friday the 13th town, they've embraced it, hanging up signs, opening stores, having festivals, naming meals after the movie, and even throwing Friday the 13th themed weddings.
I didn't really know what to expect. I thought it was just going to be in a room, but we actually were picked up at a predetermined location in a convertible by a man dressed as Jason Voorhees. Jason took us out of the convertible, walked us down the aisle. After we renewed our vows, they presented us with a very bloody, gory, appearing to be covered in human hair and all sorts of stuff chainsaw, brought back to the convertible by Jason and paraded around the town in a convertible that said "Just Married," driven by Jason Voorhees.
The only person who seemed uncomfortable was the poor host of the featurette, who clearly wishes they would have sent him on a warmer day.
I'm here in Blairstown, New Jersey on one of the coldest days of the year to show you where these summer camp classics were filmed.
Annie reaches a coffee shop where everyone stares in disbelief when she says she's looking for Camp Crystal Lake, including the busboy, who I knew looked familiar. Then I realized I knew him from House of a Thousand Corpses, Intolerable Cruelty, and The Warriors. A local agrees to give her a ride halfway to her destination, and as they walk to his truck they run into another local, Crazy Ralph.
You're going to Camp Blood, ain't you?
God damn it, Ralph, get out of here. Go on, get! Leave people alone!
You'll never come back again.
Oh, shut up, Ralph.
It's got a death curse.
But spoiler alert, he's right, and he's environmentally conscious. Crazy Ralph is played by Walt Gorney, a mostly Broadway actor, which explains his theatrical line delivery. Annie is dropped off at a cemetery of all fucking things and resumes hitchhiking, eventually catching a ride in a Jeep. She gets freaked out when the driver doesn't stop at her exit and jumps out of the car. Despite jumping head first, she somehow avoids jamming her head down into her torso, and instead hurts her leg, which hinders her ability to run away. So the killer easily catches up to her and slits her throat, killing the cutest girl in this movie a mere 22 minutes in, but giving us some sweet Savini gore as a parting gift.
We cast her neck, built a rubber appliance with a slit in it already, so when she went back, you'd see it open. I think the motion was the head was down, the knife went, and she threw her head back, and it's still used today. The slit throat is already there, the actor opens it, you know. So I remember hammering copper tubing down and laying it on her life cast over the collarbone so it would come somewhere where the cut throat was going to be, glued the copper tubing to her, which is a very primitive thing to do today, and then put the foam latex appliance over it, and then when her head came up, we just pumped the blood out of that slit, the copper tubing, the blood shot out. I think the tubing went up her legs and just pumped blood through 2 pieces of tubing, so it like pumped out of her throat when she put her head back, and then she fell out of frame, okay?
In the meantime, 3 other teenagers are driving to the camp and for some reason listening to the Dukes of Hazzard soundtrack. The trio is composed of prankster and constant third wheel Ned, beautiful Marcy, and her boyfriend Jack, played by a 21-year-old Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon kicks ass, and he kept making horror movies long after he became a superstar. Unlike some people. He just seems like a cool dude is what I'm saying. Although I still think his most famous movie sucks. I'd hide my opinion, but what's the use? I like Kevin Bacon, but I hate Footloose. They arrive in time to meet their boss, mustache and short shorts enthusiast and national Ned Flanders lookalike runner-up, Steve Christie, who I like to think is an uncle or some kind of older relative to Lieutenant Dangle from Reno 911. They also meet Alice, the kinda nerdy, kinda shy artist who's been having an affair with Steve.
When did you do this?
Last night.
Do I really look like that?
You did last night.
In one of the movie's biggest thematic accomplishments, Friday the 13th explores the ramifications of a 35-year-old boss sleeping with his 19-year-old employee and what it does to her feelings. I'm just fucking with you. The relationship is heavily hinted at here rather than outright stated, but it was all over the original scripts, one draft of which also saw Alice become pregnant. But it's never explored here because after Steve leaves to get supplies, they literally never share another scene together. With Steve gone, the kids all gather around and hang out, allowing us to meet the last two counselors, Brenda, who kinda serves as an unrequited love interest for Ned, and Bill, who's a kinda unrequited love interest for Alice, and is played by Harry Crosby, son of one of the most legendary entertainers of all time, Academy Award-winning 3 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Bing Crosby, who juggled horse racing, ownership of a baseball team, and ownership of a few television stations, while still finding the time to record 1,600 songs, star in 70 movies, and revolutionize the recording industry by introducing audio and videotape recorders to American producers. My God, I'm surprised this guy didn't invent a machine that lets you work in your sleep.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Bring my congratulations.
I couldn't be more surprised if I won the Kentucky Derby, really.
As for his son, according to everyone, he was a real cool dude, who would entertain the cast and crew during downtime by playing his guitar. No doubt a skill he picked up from his famous musician father.
He latched on to us, because we were doing stunts and we were physical, and and he would try to do stuff. He got hurt one day. He fell on his tailbone, I think, and hurt it real bad. Just flying backwards when we faked the punch at him. He hit a rock. But he hung out with us, and he was great. He would sit in the back seat of the car and just play guitar all day as we drove from location to location. He's Harry Crosby, so we surely questioned him of what the relationship was, and his sister is the actress, that we were all, love, and what Bing was like, and he was, I think Harry was one of the last kids, I think, to come along, I think.
After Steve leaves, the kids immediately goof around, especially Ned, who shoots an arrow a foot away from Brenda as a joke, an arrow which was actually shot by Tom Savini.
There was only one time that Sean wanted me to shoot an arrow, and that was at the target while Laurie Bartram was near it, But he wanted to know how accurate I could be with the bow and arrow. Meanwhile, Tasso and I would shoot boxes out of each other's hands with bows and arrows, Not too far away, but, we were pretty good. So he went up to the target and pointed at the middle, and I shot the arrow right there when he pointed. And it scared him, because he was pointing at the target, and he thought we were being unsafe, but we were just being deadly accurate, I was wound up, ready to go, and where do you want it? He pointed at the target. He was 5 feet away from it, so I just, But obviously, he trusted us from that point on.
Ta-da! The counselors jump in the lake where they're watched by someone in the woods as they swim around. When they're ready to go back to the cabin, Ned pretends to drown, prompting his co-workers to panic and spring into action, only to realize he's a dick who's trying to get a kiss from Brenda in the dumbest way possible.
Come on, Ned. Come on.
Oh, Nettie! Oh,
Ned, you just met this girl 45 minutes ago. Can you take a fucking chill pill? When they're done swimming, Alice goes back to the cabin to discover a snake. The teenagers, being teenagers, giggle and panic, and then Bill chops the snake up with a machete. Make no mistake, that's not a prop, that's a real snake getting killed. But who gives a shit? It's a snake. Millions of people eat their steak dinner while watching Bear Grylls and Naked and Afraid, where snakes are par for the course. Though I will say the handler was allegedly on set and didn't know the snake was going to get killed and was pretty upset about it, though no confirmation of that story exists.
Well, at least we know what's for dinner.
Handsome Bill looks pretty cool with that machete. It's a shame Harry Crosby wasn't in more things. A police officer comes by and interrupts another one of Ned's awesome pranks, then gives a line reading straight out of Dumb and Dumber.
Would you just get off a spaceship or something? Colombian gold, man. Grass, hash, the weed, dig it?
Hey, what's he talking about?
Hey, don't get smart.
I'm surprised he doesn't call Kevin Bacon a pumpkin pie haircutted freak. Anyway, the cop warns them about Crazy Ralph and then disappears from the story entirely. Come on, Friday the 13th, at least to kill the guy if you're gonna have him never show up again. Speaking of showing up again, Crazy Ralph shows up again, but instead of, acting normal and maybe knocking on the door, having a cup of coffee, explaining that they never caught the killer and arsonist who's been trying to keep the camp closed, he hides in the pantry and just keeps telling them that they're doomed and he's a messenger of God.
Messenger of God. You're doomed if you stay here.
It makes sense. There's a reason they don't call him Normal Ralph. As day slowly turns to night, lonely boy Ned sees Jack and Marcy kissing and wanders off by himself. He sees a mysterious figure go into one of the empty cabins and follows inside. As a storm begins to rage, Jack and Marcy find an empty cabin of their own and wander inside to have sex. And while they're doing it, we find out that Ned is still a third wheel even after death when we see his body with its throat slit right above his fucking friends. Marcy leaves to go take a piss and Jack is at his most relaxed when someone holds down his head and stabs a fucking arrow up through his neck. A classic kill that was probably this movie's most intricate effect.
We cast him, did a fake body. He's actually under the bed with his head coming up in the bed, and the fake body was lying in the bed. And we did a little illusion there. We put the same shirt on the fake body. We had him wear a chain, I think, that we also put on the fake body. So cutting from the real Kevin with the shirt and the necklace to the fake body with the shirt and the necklace, you believe that was Kevin. And I actually pumped, the arrow was attached to a ice bag that was glued to the plaster support of the neck. So the action of me pushing the arrow through Kevin's neck was also pushing against the ice bag and forcing the blood to come out of whatever hole I could make. That's why the arrow spins. Because after I push the arrow through, I'm moving it around to create a hole for the blood to come out, okay? That's why it's so, I mean, people, they applaud that effect when Kevin died.
Also, if you think Ned's body being on the top bunk was just for fun, his corpse actually had a purpose, making the audience pay attention to what's above Jack rather than the real danger that's below. Marcy finishes peeing and we get a solid minute of her in her big-ass white panties before she gets killed with an axe to the head. A nice bit of gore that was accomplished by gluing a rubber prop axe to her head. While Jack, Marcy, and Ned have all been busy getting murdered, Alice and Brenda have been lounging around listening to Bill play a song that Harry Crosby actually wrote himself. Brenda finally gets to show some personality when she suggests they smoke weed and play strip Monopoly.
You have got to be kidding.
We're in Underwear Town heading straight to Titty City when a storm interrupts them and Brenda has to run. That's all for strip Monopoly in this movie, and it never took off as a fad. Probably because once they're naked, what's the point? To sit there and keep playing naked? They should have been playing Truth or Dare Monopoly, something that ends in a little bit of action. We cut back to Steve drinking coffee at a diner and chatting with this sweet old woman who I bet makes a kick-ass apple pie. He leaves and he ends up getting stuck due to the weather. A cop picks him up and gives him a ride back, discussing how there's a full moon out, which in the cops' world means more crime.
We keep statistics. We have more accidents, more rapes, more robberies, more homicides, more of everything when there's a full moon. It upsets people. Makes them nuts.
They make a science out of coincidence.
Your old Ralph was out your way today. His wife was a nervous wreck till we got him home.
Oh boy, that's all I need. Crazy Ralph running around.
Wait, what was that? Crazy Ralph has a wife? What the fuck is that relationship like? How was your day, dear? Meatloaf, that's my favorite. The cop gets a call about a fatal car accident, so he has to leave Steve on his own to walk the rest of the way to the camp. Steve makes it to the Camp Crystal Lake sign where he sees someone he recognizes.
Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
But he gets stabbed in the gut and killed by whoever it is. Brenda gets back to her cabin and is ready to read by candlelight like it's the 1800s when she hears a kid's voice saying, "Help me," which she straight up ignores and keeps reading. Finally, she goes to investigate the second time she hears it, running outside in her nightgown and not even bringing a raincoat. She ends up on the archery range where we hear her scream. Alice and Bill hear her scream too and go out investigating. They can't find their friends, the phone line is cut, and the car won't start. But Bill is optimistic.
Why don't we just hike out of here? Just get out, right now.
Look, it's 10 miles to the nearest crossroads. Steve will be back soon. We can use his Jeep if we need to get help. Don't worry. There's probably some stupid explanation for all this.
Like what?
We'll be laughing about this tomorrow. I promise.
The lights go out and Bill heads out to check the generator while Alice takes a nap, which are two stupid moves. How do you not realize you haven't seen your friends in hours and you can't contact the outside world? Alice goes looking for Bill and boy does she find him nailed to the door by arrows. Steve should have put up one of those post no Bill signs to avoid this. Bill's death is more great work from Tom Savini.
We had to do some hideous stuff to Harry, the whole arrow in the hair and the head bit. He loved it all. In fact, he would walk around with all these arrows sticking out of him one day, so anybody lucky enough to get a picture of that. I have a few. Now, I remember doing elaborate, like a Steve Martin arrow through the head gag, but we did it this way on Harry. The metal band went over his head under an appliance, We were cutting slits in his own expensive jeans to stick arrows in his legs. I think there was chest and then one right in the eye, The eye thing, I think, was my idea because I wanted to see that, It's pretty grisly to be, she opens the door and there he is with arrows and one in his eye, one in his neck.
But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes. In a close-up of Bill's body, you can see his eye twitch, not because it's a mistake or he's still alive, but because the fake blood was burning his eye.
There were two types of blood. One, so it wouldn't change color or turn, that was made out of a chemical that was a chemical used for developing called photoflow. And it also kept the color and the consistency of the blood thin and useful. And then there was the stuff that they would use on the skin and things like that that didn't have, obviously, that strong lye chemical. What they would do is they would kind of pump it up through underneath the latex, and it would come, streaming out and for the effects. And Tom was brilliant at it. So I had to actually get up on a support that was nailed to the bottom of the door. I was, was standing on the door as the door opens. So that took a while to get positioned there. So somehow the batches got mixed up. So off we go, and we're doing a night shoot, and it's at midnight, and they're pumping the stuff in underneath, and it's getting in my eye, and since there's no oxygen, I can't feel anything until about 4 a.m. They took this off, and as soon as the oxygen hit, my eye was burning, and in the car I go. They took me to the local hospital, and they gave me the light in the eye, and I couldn't see the light. So it took a while, about 6 months. It took a while because I could then see light, but then it was way out of focus, and it happens.
Alice books it back to her cabin and secures the door. Anything else you want to stack in front of it? How about that piano? She blocks the door, but she forgets about the window. She's reminded when Brenda's corpse, which is actually Tom Savini in a wig, gets thrown through it. It's not clear how she died, but I see a hole in her head, and she was last seen on the archery range, so I'll assume she got killed the same way as Bill. As for the rope, my guess is that the killer used it to drag her body around. Now completely alone with the killer, Alice knows she's D-O-N-E fucked. But she sees a beacon of hope when a Jeep pulls up outside. Thinking it's Steve, she runs outside, only to be shocked when she meets... Oh, thank God. It's just one of the Golden Girls.
Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
She comforts Alice like only a mother can with a hug and some kind words, then goes to check out the cabin against Alice's wishes. After finding Brenda's body, Miss Voorhees breaks into a soliloquy about how the camp has seen too much trouble.
God, this place. Steve should never have opened this place again. There's been too much trouble here.
She gets more and more unstable, recalling how she was working as the camp cook in 1957, when a young boy drowned because the counselors weren't paying attention.
They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
She then elaborates that the drowning victim was her son, Jason Voorhees, before going full crazy and talking to visions of her dead son.
I am Jason.
She completely loses it and blames Alice for Jason's death, then pulls out a knife and attacks her, but Alice gets the upper hand and whacks Miss Voorhees across the back with a fire poker, then runs outside to find the bodies of Annie and Steve, who falls from a tree upside down. Okay, so now that we know who the killer is, how the fuck did she pull any of this off? We'll assume Miss Voorhees is the same age as our actress, Betsy Palmer, who was 54 here. So a little 54-year-old woman killed all these people, including grown men. She managed to kill Annie by the cemetery, make it back to the camp to kill Ned, Jack, and Marcy, then somehow killed Brenda and Steve at around the same time in different locations, then strung up Bill's 200-pound body, tossed Brenda through a window, and strung up Steve's body too. I know, it's just a movie, but it's my theory that maybe, just maybe, Jason's father Elias got off his lazy dead ass and helped out. A little husband and wife murder spree. That hit with the fire poker only managed to make Miss Voorhees more crazy.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
Miss Voorhees catches up with Alice and they continue fighting all over the campsite to the point where it gets tedious. Miss Voorhees slaps the shit out of Alice and throws her to a table, but Alice gets 2 good hits in, giving Miss Voorhees the old Crystal Lake clam jammer and then cold clocking her. Then they fight in the pantry where Alice defends against a knife attack with a skillet. She whacks Miss Voorhees upside the head, drawing blood, but again doesn't finish the job. Also, something interesting I noticed, way after I was done editing. Friday the 13th came out 2 weeks before The Shining, so technically Miss Voorhees beat Jack Torrance to this little "here's Johnny" moment. Finally, Alice is by the lake when Miss Voorhees attacks again and we get full-on Crystal Lake combat. Miss Voorhees and Alice duke it out in a fight scene that took a long-ass time to film.
We had very high ambitions for the fight. We didn't think, or didn't even know, that we could have used stunt people at all. In fact, we didn't. There were no stunt people in the movie because that's for a different kind of movie making.
We all did everything ourselves. I mean, what you saw was what we did. We got bruised and battered, and Betsy had my hair and smacking my face into the sand, and she really was strong, and it was real, you know.
I think that Sean had it scheduled the way we were going to shoot it, so, but it was still a long, long time being out there in that way and working, and we really wrestled and tussled on the beach.
By the time you've been shooting all night and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're like a little, you're just so beat that whatever happens just happens, and if somebody starts grabbing, you start fighting back. I mean, survival in any case, it was just, it was real.
It turned out fine in the end, but my goodness, it was hard. And, we were shooting at night and it was getting cold, and we spent the next 2 nights, I believe, doing stuff that I thought we were going to be able to get done in 2 or 3 hours. It took a long time to get it right.
Alice finally finishes this long, long battle when she cuts Miss Voorhees' head off with her own machete. Miss Voorhees reaches for a head that's no longer there, but it's actually not her hands, it's the same hands that we've been seeing throughout the movie. Those of Tom Savini's best friend and right-hand man, Tasso Stavrakis.
So here's, Betsy Palmer wiping out these people. Well, she has to die in a glorious way. So we had the machete, of course, and the idea was to cut her head off. So we cast her head. And I remember, if you see the film again, Friday the 13th, Part 1, when Betsy Palmer's head goes off her body, her hands actually come up into the frame as if looking for the head. And that's just our way of making fake stuff look real. You add something real, like real hands. But if you see it, notice that her knuckles are full of black hair, because that's my best friend Tasso's hands, because he was actually slumped over with Betsy Palmer's head stuck with toothpicks. We stuck the foam rubber head with toothpicks into the rubber neck so that the machete, when it hit it, would just break the toothpicks and the head would hopefully spin off, which it did. I wish it was in slow motion to see her head spinning in slow motion, But so that's it. So it's Tasso bent over with her head on his back with a sweater pulled up, and I took the machete and knew where to cut the head off, and, so that was her death, another glorious death,
It was great to research this movie and find out that a Greek had a hand in at least 2 classic horror movies, Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th. And to Tasso Stavrakis I say, Tasso agori μου, είμαι περήφανος ότι υπάρχει, καλός Ελλήνας, στις ταινίες τρόμου. Alice, exhausted from the night's events and not wanting any more surprises, rows a canoe out in the middle of the lake and waits for the cops, while some wonderfully serene music plays. Music that was composed by Harry Manfredini, who would go on to make the music for 9 more Friday the 13th films and the Friday the 13th game. The cops arrive and all is well, until Jason Voorhees pops out of the lake and drags Alice underneath the water. This marks the first appearance of Jason in any form, which means Ari Lehman will forever hold the distinction of being the first actor to play him.
When they went to cast the role of Jason Voorhees as a little boy, the first thought was, hey, they're going to use Sean's son, Noel. But what I've heard through the grapevine is that Mrs. Cunningham would have none of that, which is good for me. Then Sean turned to Steve Miner, I've heard, and said, well, what do you think? It was Steve Miner who said, what about that little guy, Ari? Because I had done a film with them just prior to Friday the 13th. And, they basically just called me up, said, can you swim? I said, yes. They're like, great, getting into character, So I went over by the water, I was staring into the water, what would it be like to be that kid? And I'm doing that and I'm getting into it, and Kevin Bacon walks up, he's like, hey, Ari, what you doing? And I'm like, I'm getting into character, man. And he just laughed, he's like, Harry, come over here. tell him what you said. Tell him what you said. I'm like, I'm getting into character. Don't you guys do that? You know, totally naive. They didn't let, you know, Tom said, don't show her the makeup, you know? So I kind of walked out in the water and they brought the boat on. She hadn't really seen me. I was facing the other way. I go underwater, I turn around. So when I jump up out, she was actually frightened. She jumped out of the boat and everything. So they had to dry her off and blow dry her hair. And, you know, it's kind of shows her acting skill because she knew I was there.
Fun is inventing how to do this stuff or creating stuff. So I just kept thinking of this guy that I saw in my neighborhood when I was a kid. His name was Bill Bailey. He was a derelict, homeless guy, drunk. But he was misshapen. He had one ear was lower than the other, one eye was kind of lower. He looked like Quasimodo. And that's what I based Jason on. In fact, I had hair at one point. The hair, I don't know, it just didn't quite look right, so we just left him bald, as if he was like a hydrocephalic mongoloid pinhead or something, and that was the look, you know. And they let us go with that. I mean, we didn't do any tests, any mock-ups, you know, and just describe what I was going to do. And, you know, we're shooting, it's like guerrilla filmmaking. It was a low-budget film, so. But that's the look of Jason ever since.
Alice wakes up in the hospital screaming, and after getting a sedative right in the ass, calms down and tells the police about a boy who pulled her under the water. The cops say they didn't find a boy, thereby setting up the sequel. Or 2 sequels, or 3 sequels, or maybe 10 sequels. I'm sure we'll find out. Whew. That's that for Friday the 13th. And if you're wondering how you rate a classic, stay tuned for the breakdown. Welcome to my breakdown. If you watched my last video, you'll know that the scientific rating method I've come up with is called the PEC rating, which stands for Plot, Effects, Characters, Kills. Despite starting out as a knockoff of Halloween, which was killing it in the box office, Friday the 13th is its own movie. Like I said earlier, we'll come to see more of that flip from rooting for the victim to rooting for the killer as the sequels progress. I also dig the sort of twist ending, and not only having a killer with a great motive, but having it be a female overall. I give the original 3.5 stars. This is a Savini masterpiece, and despite the limited budget, Savini and Stavrakis put a lot of effort into things like a simple throat slit or an axe to the head. I give the effects 3.5 stars. Here's where Friday the 13th gets its lowest rating, and where the series as a whole is lacking. The characters are rarely fleshed out, and interesting characters are killed off quickly. But what can you really expect from a movie where the teenage camp counselors are just fodder for the kills? I like Steve Christie and Mrs. Voorhees, but we don't see much of them. My other favorite character was Bill, but I think that has a lot more to do with learning that his actor was such a cool person. Overall, I give the characters 2.5 stars. Finally, we get to the kills. First up, the awards. The kill of the week goes to Jack Burrell. It's definitely the most memorable kill in the movie, although I really enjoyed Bill's death too. Kill of the week goes to Steve Christie. I understand the off-screen death for Claudette in the beginning, to establish a tone, but Steve is an important character, he deserved better. Finally, the non-kill of the week goes to the revelation that the killer is Mrs. Voorhees. It might be a little silly looking back now that a 54-year-old woman is the killer, but Betsy Palmer's performance is great, and I believe a female killer had not been done before, but I could be wrong. As for my rating, much like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the film's hype supersedes the actual gore, so I'll give the kills 2.5 stars, mostly because of Savini. That makes my final rating for Friday the 13th a B-. Hello? Who is that? Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess? Oh!
Again. Τάσο, αγόρι μου.
Τάσο, αγόρι μου.
Είμαι περήφανος.
Είμαι περήφανος. Ότι υπάρχει.
Κι άλλος Έλληνας.
I can't.
Okay. Είμαι περήφανος ότι υπάρχει κι άλλος...
Slow down. Είμαι περήφανος ότι υπάρχει.
Κι άλλος Έλληνας.
Κι άλλος? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Yellows. But not exactly.
Let's try to get this. Τάσο, αγόρι μου. Είμαι περήφανος ότι υπάρχει και άλλος Έλληνας. This last part, stis? Is that what that says? Stis. Okay. Should write it with an E. S-T-E-S. Stis.
Okay.
Put that.
All right.
Put that, you fucking asshole.
Sorry, I was writing it kind of in Greek.
Don't write it kind of in anything. Τάσο, αγόρι μου. Είμαι περήφανος ότι υπάρχει κι άλλο σελίνα στη στενή στρώμο. Did I get it partially right?
That was not that bad.
You
Come on, man.
skipped over.
He can't. He's not fucking He's not giving a speech in front of the Parthenon.
Can you read
He's
it? Spell ταινίες a different way?
No. Στις ταινίες.
Στις ταινίες τρόμου.
Στις ταινίες τρόμο.
Yeah.
Στις ταινίες τρόμο.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Because you're chuckling a little.
Because you kind of combined all those three words together. Στις ταινίες τρόμου.
Στις ταινίες τρόμο. You fucking bitch. Don't record me. Don't record me fucking up. Τάσο, αγόρι μου. Είμαι περήφανος ότι υπάρχει καλός Ελλήνας στις ταινίες τρόμο. Did I get it right?
Yeah, can you do it again?
Yeah, but like much slower. You're like fucking. That's what I'm going.
Can you tell me this word one more time? Περήφανος.
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 Okay. Περήφανος.
Περήφανος.
Can you tell me υπάρχει?
Υπάρχει.
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 Sound like you're from a small town. Υπάρχει.
Let me just do another take.
All right.
I'm gonna fuck this.
Can you say υπάρχει?
Υπάρχει. Stop laughing at me, you goddamn bitch. Did I get that right? Did I do it good?
Can you put the emphasis on περήφανος?
Why does that word bother you so much?
Because when you say περήφανος, it's not a word.
Pe-
There's no word. that
Περήφανος.
exists. Περήφανος. There you go.
The R.
After the R.
Περήφανος.
Περήφανος.
Tasso, I didn't graduate Greek school. Only fucking Tasso Stavrakis knew what I went through to do this. Tasso, αγόρι μου. Είμαι περήφανος ότι έχουμε